Hi guys, Jester Bell is here, and you're not going to see my face today. I just wanted to do this quick recording based on my thoughts about what's been going with the Harley and Ivy relationship over the past year. Serious talk about it and how it's been making me feel, and I'll just go from there and start off right off the bat. Um, you might have heard that DC Comics, this is the overview. DC Comics has basically been spending the last year or so hyping up to no end that Harley and Ivy are going to have this massive reunion, and they got them back together finally in Fear State, which is the Batman event that recently went on, and all these makeout scenes and they did it 3 comics in a row: the Catwoman comic, the Batman comic, and the Harley comic. Celebrations on Twitter, celebrations on Reddit of finally these two are a canon couple. Oh, I thought they were a canon couple before, but no, now they're really a canon couple. And then they hype up this date issue that she and Harley are going to have. And you know what happens in the date issue? Pretty much nothing other than them separating once again. Now, before you think that this is a video talking negatively about this, first of all, I saw this coming. I saw it coming because Stephanie Phillips said in a Q&A that this issue was supposed to be the date issue and that they have plans for Poison Ivy in 2021. She didn't say plans for Harlivy. This was answering a question where someone specifically asked her, are there plans for Harlivy in 2022? And she said that the Harley Quinn 10 is their date issue, and then there's lots of plans for Poison Ivy specifically in 2022, but nothing about Harlivy. And I saw specifically in the solicitations that after a year pretty much of building them up, teasing them, every single comic with Harley being about Harlivy, that all of a sudden just disappear off of the solicitations. After you would think that this was building up for them being together for a while. Now, once again, if you're thinking that this is a video getting mad at DC for breaking them up again, essentially, it is not. I 100% endorse them breaking them up and keeping them apart. But let's explain that for a minute. I see people getting mad about it, but I feel that I need to give my opinion out here because I feel that the people who are pushing this relationship so hard, particularly on Twitter, are the only ones being heard. And people like me, who I know exist, a lot of them are in my certain group, a lot of them have tuned out and don't talk about it anymore because they don't want to get bashed, but people like me aren't really speaking up anymore, and I don't know that DC Comics cares about what I have to say or what anyone has to say at this point, but here we go. So, I have a big problem with this overly romanticized, sensationalized ship of Harley and Ivy that's been going on, aka Harlivy. It's the relationship. I really hate it whenever a ship exists and you have to change the characters to get that and change them to make it canon. And people have had this idea since the beginning, all the way since these characters appeared together in the 90s, that they are just head over heels in love with each other and that they need to be together all the time because they have, quote unquote, the most stable relationship, or as a lot of people have been putting it, the most healthy, wholesome relationship in comics. And no, I don't see that whatsoever. There's definitely a positive element to it where Ivy's supportive of Harley, but and I do enjoy those comics. I enjoy the original comics where they were friends, but there is a lot of turbulence as well, and I'm going to show some pictures hopefully on the video you're watching. But in addition to her being supportive, Ivy spends a lot of her time, especially in comics written back pre-New 52 and even after that, she spends a lot of her time belittling Harley for her intelligence. She spends a lot of time pushing her away because she'd rather spend more time with her plants. She has manipulated her. She has teased her with wanting a partner different than Harley. She has been toxic enough to attack Harley in certain comics. Now, there's some of that. It's not as consistent as others, but generally speaking, they just have a much more turbulent relationship than people want to let on. And even her support of her, wanting her to get over the Joker, a lot of it was just, in my opinion, from Ivy's own misandry and her need to control things, because she hates men. She wants Harley to be that way. She was not, especially in tasks, supporting Harley of, you just need to find yourself, you just need to, go straight. You need to become a better person. You need to be your best self. She essentially just wanted Harley to be her sidekick. That was specifically the TAS version. And that's specifically the Paul Dini version, which is interesting because people keep using him to prove that he always wanted them to be a couple, even though he's very wishy-washy on that in interviews. And in his comics, he's the one who largely writes those comics where Ivy's cruel to Harley. He's the one who wrote the comics where she's just straight up abusive to Harley, once again seeing on screen. These were all Paul Dini written comics. They started out in the early days with the tie-ins to Batman TAS, and then they continued not to have much of a relationship in the Harley Quinn 1999 issue. And then when he brought them back in Gotham City Sirens, once again, they were pretty turbulent. They actually don't spend a lot of time together in that issue. A lot of it is Ivy belittling Harley once again. And Gotham City Sirens got taken over by a different writer who also wrote them as pretty turbulent. He makes Harley manipulate Ivy just to get to Joker, and Ivy end up saying that she wants to kill Harley, and going back on that, of course, but still, even though she goes back on it and admits she really cares about Harley a lot, maybe most of all, she still wanted to kill her straight up. So, and of course, this I'm focusing on the comics where there's a violence between the two. There's a lot of them. And if you're like, wait, there is a good element. I know it. I've seen it. Yeah, there is a good element to these two characters being together. And I enjoy that supportive element. But I see the characters as a whole when they're together. I see a very turbulent back and forth relationship because they're two psychotic criminals, really, at their core. The best comics, the most lighthearted, supportive comics you're going to find between these two, probably Paul Dini's Batgirl Adventures, where Harley rescues Ivy, and maybe Carl Kessel's 2000s run, where they're very good friends, very best friends, and that's probably the most self-sacrificing you get from Ivy to Harley, even though she still wants to maintain a distance from her. So yes, there's definitely good elements, but there's also nasty elements to their relationship. And so, but what I'm getting at is their shippers have always had this idea that they were head over heels in love with each other from day one. And so obviously, no matter what the context is, so obviously in love that they were the true love relationship that needs to stay together, the healthiest, wholesome relationship in comics. And I don't see that at all. At their best, they were really good friends. They weren't in love. Even if you read the 2000 series with these two together, they were just best friends, like Thelma and Louise. One of the characters is the ditzy person who makes mistakes. The other one is the more matter-of-fact one. Or Marilyn Monroe, and I forget her co-star in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. They were that kind of dynamic. They were not this hot and heavy lesbian romance where the two just have to sleep together every 5 seconds like they're portrayed as now. We'll get to that in a second. But fans have the idea that that's their relationship, and I would encourage them to actually go back and read a lot of the original comics and take into consideration that was not the greatest relationship of all time. Now, when they changed, it was Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner who all of a sudden, after Ivy didn't appear with Harley at all in the New 52, they all of a sudden had to reappear again as this completely different character. And it was basically this one-dimensional girl who is really soft-spoken, completely different than Poison Ivy. And her real goal and her only characteristic seems to be she loves Harley. She's perfectly supportive if Harley wants to go and sleep around with a million other characters, because that's how she was portrayed in this. It was a romanticization of polygamy, which I completely disagree with. And she apparently loves Harley so much, she's fine with her sleeping with other characters and says that it's just she's happy, I'm happy. And it's like, that's not realistic, and I'm not saying that characters have to be realistic, but once again, I have a problem that these two are propped up as the best, healthiest, most ideal relationship ever when it's not that. Them in this comic was a romanticization of that, and it was not true to what the characters were. You had to change them both completely just to get to this new relationship. But importantly, they weren't actually in a relationship of this comic, as I've implied. It was a quote unquote friends with benefits relationship. And after Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti left the series, Ivy pretty much disappeared out of Harley's life. And I think that's how we got the two Ivies, essentially. We have the soft-spoken one who exists only to be Harley's girlfriend, and then we have the more violent character who's like original Ivy. But DC hadn't really been using them since, because it doesn't appear that they really wanted to. They came out when Amanda Conner said that they were girlfriends, and they said, "We love that they are best friends forever." So they went on for a while, and DC was not really doing much with them other than killing Ivy off in Heroes in Crisis, and no one noticed. None of the shippers seemed to notice. They just had this idea in their head that Ivy saved Harley, and they live happily ever together, which is not what was happening whatsoever. So we just basically have an on-off relationship where DC doesn't want to commit to it, and they don't even know if they want to say that they're bisexual or not. And they basically have Harley as a character, since they're committed to getting over the Joker, as having that happen regardless if Ivy's there or not. So Ivy's not even instrumental. She's not even key to that as the exclusive thing that gets Harley away from Joker. She's just not even really being used by Harley. Finally, they seem to really pull back on their relationship completely in this Harley and Ivy miniseries that came out in about 2019, 2020. And it seemed to be just portraying them as friends again, and friends who pretty violently go their separate ways, as they would have, and they had multiple times in the original comics. And then Rich Johnson from Bleeding Cool starts making up these articles about how DC Comics is straightwashing Harley and Ivy. Mind you, they never committed to their relationship really in the first place, and the relationship, in my opinion, was never in character in the first place. It just seemed to be in service of this idea shippers had about their relationship, which they never committed to either. But then that's finally when those articles were published that people started screaming and calling DC Comics homophobic and straightwashing and whatnot. So I don't think that DC Comics liked that. And so for the last year, after not really doing much with Harley and Ivy, and after, just trying to keep them more separate and trying to pull back on that relationship, whatever it was, the last year, every single Harley comic I pick up is like an epitaph to Harlivy. It's a book with them slobbering over each other in makeout scenes. It's a book with a million sex scenes. I tell you, they released a comic written by T. Franklin that's a tie-in to the animated show, where that's all the comic is. It's a softcore porn comic where there's every other second the two characters are trying to get with each other, to put it mildly. That's what the entire comic is. I'm really shocked that DC let that release. It's a relationship that's so sexualized in everything, and everything is always about either how wonderful the relationship between each other is, or how much they want to get with each other despite how turbulent the relationship can be, in the case of that softcore porn comic I brought up. And what I'm saying is, I've never felt more alienated as a Harley fan. And that's saying something with all the changes DC's made to the character over the past 5 years or so, even longer than that. I've never felt more alienated because I don't pick up comics to get Harley and Ivy porn. I'll just call it that. I don't pick up comics to get Harley and Ivy porn. I have not been able to get one comic that is not like what do you call it? A sacrament to the Harlivy ship. Just softcore porn Harlivy comics, the Pride Month thing where they're the mainline comic, the Fear State tie-in, the Love is a Battlefield Valentine's Day issue completely dedicated to them. Just so much of Harley and Ivy mooning over each other, making out with each other, having a sex scene, talking about how they'd like to do a sex scene, or talking about how they just have. I don't want to read that. I know a lot of people don't want to read that, but don't want to speak up about it because they don't want to get in trouble, because they don't want people to call them homophobic or anything, which you'll get called if you don't like the ship, apparently. So we get just so much buildup and people slobbering over their relationship and saying, finally, we got these two together. It's canon. I thought it was canon before they were celebrating, but no, now it's officially canon. And then DC Comics, in their fashion, separates them in one issue. It was a lot lighter this time. It's not an angry breakup or anything. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if Ivy's alleged new series features. Is it her actual new series, or does it just feature her talking about Harley constantly? We'll see about that. But shippers are mad after saying that they won, that celebrating that they won with this relationship all year long, and just losing their minds and calling it a momentous occasion every time these characters have another makeout scene, and then being like, oh, DC Comics, they're back on the homophobic straight washing thing, calling that about DC Comics. Those who actually read comics and knows what's happening. But I say for me, DC Comics needs to stop with this relationship, because it's not in character for one thing. I do not see it in character whenever we have like this perfect loving relationship between the two characters. Ivy's character has been totally changed just to get it to work. I don't recognize either character anymore when they're just doing the softcore porn pages or whatever. But you're not pleasing anyone. You're pushing people like me away when you make everything about their relationship. That's what the comics became about. That's what the animated show has become completely about. The one thing we got this year that wasn't about it was the Suicide Squad movie, and even then, Margot Robbie was bombarded in each interview with every other question being, when is Poison Ivy coming in, which she gave the same answer each time. So you alienate people like me, but with the people that you want to appeal to, the shippers on Twitter and whatnot, you build them up, you make them celebrate, and then since you don't actually want to commit to this relationship, you slam them down again. And you keep going on that cycle. Break up, stay apart for a while, get back together, break up again, get them mad at you all again. You're not pleasing anyone. If DC Comics does not want these two to be a couple, then they shouldn't be a couple. They shouldn't have allowed Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner to make their relationship just basically an innuendo-laden friendship in the first place. They shouldn't have it's called that canon, they shouldn't have let it continue at all, because this is the problem you create. Now you've got a divided fan base, you've got entitled shippers who say that they need to be together and everything. It's very ironic after years of claiming that Harley needed to be independent, that now everyone only seems to care about her relationship with Ivy and wants everything she does and every triumph she has to be thanks to Ivy. It's very ironic for that, but you're not only creating an entitled shipper fan base that gets angry now whenever you back off, but you don't have the people who don't like their relationship happy either, because they're constantly being baited. So what I'm saying is, DC Comics, if you don't want these to be a couple, and a lot of people do not want them to be a couple, then put your foot down and don't have them be a couple. Just portray Ivy on her own. A lot of people would like that at that point. Go forward with this new series and do something good, and don't have everything be based around how much Poison Ivy loves Harley all of a sudden. Stop defining these characters by a ship. That's all I got for today. I'm really tired of this relationship once again. It's been a really grueling year when I've tried to read Harley comics and I just cannot pick one up that is not the Harlivy pandering fan service porn comic, which, again, that one comic by T. Franklin, that's the tie-in to the show. Can't even say its name on my channel like this. I'm really shocked that DC let that come out like that. I've never seen a relationship in DC Comics more sexualized or exploited than this one. It's really just put a sour taste in my mouth for these two characters, what they've currently become. It's made it so I don't even want to see them as friends again for a good long time, because I'm just so tired of how overdone it is, and I'm so tired of the worshipful articles that get written about this relationship, when really all it is romanticizing a relationship between two criminals, two very toxic criminals who aren't real, who are comic book characters. It's crazy, the worshipful articles I read about this relationship, as if it's the most euphoric thing ever. I'm just tired of it. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to have anything good next year. I'm just saying that we need to back off. If that is really what DC Comics wants, is then back off of the relationship and commit to that. You stop putting people on the back and forth train. I know this, and I said this I wanted to be short, and it's 20 minutes. Thank you guys for listening to my little rant. What do you think about all this? I did this video because of a poll on Twitter that wanted me to do this video. I'll have hopefully more positive videos for you in the upcoming year. Thanks for watching.